it's ever going to get to that point.
I've got to critique the Democratic Party too, because, at the end of the day, 44 million Americans who actually need the Affordable Care Act. There are not 44 million Americans who are unemployed in this nation. So that means these are working men and women who need health care provided to them affordably, even after they work 1, 2, or 3 jobs.
Yes.
Now, affordable care is a market-based solution to give them options in the marketplace to get affordable care. It's not Obamacare, it's affordable care. But the fact of the matter is, the Affordable Care Act is not the fundamental right to health care for all Americans of equal high quality, which ought to be added to the Constitution, which is something on the blue side of the political dynamic we could support. Health care as a fundamental right. If they have the right to a gun, because it's in the Constitution, we should have the right to health care of equal high quality in the Constitution. If we get shot, we ought to have the right to try and get to the local hospital and get patched up. That ought to be our right, right? I mean, that's the other side of owning a gun.
You got the right to hurt, you got the right to heal.
Yeah, you got the right to hurt, you got the right to heal. So, but Democrats aren't putting forward a constitutional right to health care of equal high quality. We got some single payer and some democratic socialist programs and some patchwork to trying to patch up the market where the market has failed to answer a human need. But Democrats aren't necessarily fighting for the right to health care as a fundamental right in the Constitution either. Both parties are wanting on this question, aren't they, Antonio?
100% agree. And I think what we see on the Washington level, you've been in Congress, so you know the inner workings of that. There's a lot of lobbyists. There's a lot of money exchanging hands. There's a lot of things that are happening that prevent even the people who have the best of intentions from putting forward legislation that will truly overhaul healthcare and make it so that everyone has equal, equitable, good quality healthcare.
I'm reaching the point, and before we have your word of hope, I'm reaching the point that even our Democratic leadership and response to Donald Trump doesn't go far enough. I'm thinking we need a hard left. I've not heard anyone yet who says whatever he does in the next 4 years, I have to undo in 4 years. I think Trump is going to establish a new normal where Democrats are going to be happy that we've got a bright, shiny face, either from California or Illinois or New York or wherever that face may come from. But none of them are saying that they're going to repeal all of these executive orders. None of them are saying that they're going to rebuild the Department of Education. None of them are going to say, I want all the hacks out of the Pentagon, or that I'm going to cut that Pentagon budget back to reasonable levels and that we're not going to be fighting wars all over the world, or a single war that is not declared by Congress. They're not saying that at all.
Right.
But Trump is establishing a new normal that could take 100 years or more to correct at the pace of recommendations that are coming from Democrats who are vying for the highest office in the land. Antonio?
Isn't that the craziest thing? Because the more Trump moves to the right, it forces Democrats to move to the center. So you're not when you have Democrats that are moving more and more to the center, how big is the center before it becomes the right? How big is the center before the policies that were insane before are now the new normal? And Democrats can't go back on that. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely, I do. Man, you preaching right now, brother.
It's one of these things where Democrats, like you said, have to stop, and they have to be like, this is enough. This is our plan. This is our policy. This is our platform. And once Trump is out of office, or for the next 4 years, we are going to fight. And we have a hard line where we're not going to move right any further. No concessions.
Anthony, we have about a minute and a half before the close of this segment. Can you share with our listeners and with the country a word of hope?
Keep fighting. Keep calling your local congressman. Everything. These people don't just get to do whatever they want. We don't have kings in this country. We have a voice. We have methods to make sure that things are done the way we want them to. So keep fighting.
Our very special guest in this hour has been none other than Anthony Modesto Milian. He is a writer, a thinker, a student of history. He's crystal clear. He's also an independent fine art and photojournalist photographer based in upstate South Carolina. Anthony's an inaugural fellow at the Greenville Center for Creative Arts and a grant recipient with the Chapman Cultural Center. His work can be seen in G's Magazine, the Greenville News, and Upstate Forever. Anthony is also a social media content creator with over 400,000 followers across 3 platforms. Anthony has done the work for the National Geographic, Project Pulso, Wondery, and Eat Louisa. Anthony, thank you for spending your time with us on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
You're very welcome. Don't be a stranger.
I promise I won't be, and neither will you be on this show. So grateful to Ernest Krim, who had to take this hour off this week, who expect to welcome him back next week. But I'm so glad that he recommended Anthony as his replacement on our show this hour. More when we come forward on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, KBLA Talk 1580. It's Moving Mountain Mondays.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani says affordability was the key focus in his meeting with President Trump on Friday.
It showed that this is an opportunity to now start to deliver so that people can do more than just aspire to struggle in New York City, but actually to be able to live there.
Speaking on NBC's Meet the Press, Mamdani said the conversation opened the door for potential efforts to lower the cost of living for New Yorkers. A federal judge has dismissed the criminal indictments against New York Attorney General Letitia James and former FBI Director James Comey. They argued the appointment of Lindsay Halligan as U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District was unlawful. Comey had faced charges for allegedly lying to Congress, while James was accused of mortgage fraud. And Donald Glover, more widely known as Childish Gambino, says a stroke is what caused him to cancel his world tour last year. At Camp Flog Gnaw, the Black musician told fans he learned about the stroke after going to a Houston hospital with severe head pain. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
The future of dentistry is here. Sprint Race 3D printing tech delivers crowns, veneers, and more. Same day. No temps, no waiting. One visit. Real results. Ask your dentist about Sprint Ray or visit 3ddentistsofla.com and upgrade your smile today.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
It took less than 24 hours for Cleveland Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski to make up his mind about rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders. Stefanski told reporters Monday morning that Deion's son will be the Browns starting quarterback for their home game next Sunday against San Francisco. Stefanski refused to confirm Sanders' status yesterday after Sanders, in his first NFL start, led the Browns to a 24-10 win over the Raiders in Las Vegas. Sanders, the Browns' 5th-round pick, started the season as the team's 4th-string quarterback. Things are about to get interesting in Cleveland. Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford is emerging as the MVP favorite. Stafford had 3 touchdown passes Sunday against Tampa Bay, bringing his total to 30, tops in the NFL. The 37-year-old Stafford has thrown 27 consecutive touchdown passes without an interception. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
All I need is one mic.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavish Smiley. We want to speak directly to our listeners in Altadena and all across Southern California. Recently, we invited Southern California Edison to join a town hall so fire survivors could ask questions and get clear information about the Altadena Eaton fire and this so-called settlement fund. Weeks before the event, the law firm originally connected to the program withdrew, and we provided SCE updated materials confirming those changes. But despite that, SCE later stated publicly and privately that they were pulling out of the town hall because plaintiffs' attorneys were participating. That was not accurate, and SCE knew that it was not accurate. But when shown documentation that disproved their claim, SCE ignored it and declined to correct the record. At KBLA Talk 1580, trust is not an option. It is the foundation of our work and witness. It is the promise that we make to you. And so we will not move forward with any partnership that misrepresents the facts or undermines the credibility that we have built in love and service to this beloved community. Our commitment remains with the good people of Altadena. We will continue providing independent, verified information to support your recovery without interference from any outside entity, including Southern California Edison, so you don't get burned twice. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. As always, we welcome your feedback.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. It's Moving Mountain Mondays on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, and we are blessed every Monday with Reverend Teresa Terry Hord Owens, the General Minister and President of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada, an author and advocate for the church living out its calling. She is the first person of color and second woman to lead the denomination. Since her election in 2017, Reverend Hord Owens' ministry actively reflects the disciples' priority of being an anti-racist church, being a movement for wholeness, welcoming all to the Lord's table as God has welcomed us. And in keeping with the disciples' historic commitment to Christian unity, she serves in leadership at the National Council of Churches as the treasurer of the governing board and a member of the World Council of Churches Central Committee. Reverend Terry Hord Owens, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, Madam President.
Well, happy Monday, Congressman. It's good to be with you.
Happy Thanksgiving. I hope it's a pleasant Thanksgiving for you. We have a couple of issues. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Terry.
No, I was going to just say, yeah. Well, we always have to take time to give thanks. So my house is ground zero for the festivities in the Owens family this year. So
fantastic. Listen, we were talking about in the last hour about the caring economy, what's happening with the Department of Education with respect to nursing and not making loans available or even seeing nursing as a professional organization. Anthony brought up the truth that the last hired have been the first fired. More than 300,000 Black women have lost their jobs with the federal government, and that's across the country. Yes, in Washington and Maryland and Virginia, because that's the center of the nation's federal government proper, but in federal positions in all 50 states, Black women have found themselves on the sidelines of the big, beautiful, ugly bill and Project 2025. Reverend Owens, your thoughts on this clear, Anthony made it clear, direct attack on Black women, and your thoughts on what we can do about it.
Well, it comes as a sucker punch. I think a cheap way of achieving a goal that targets women, the disadvantaged, non-white people in general. I don't know if this is part of a goal to keep more women at home and and out of the workplace, and that whole trad wife tradition of the ideas of having women at home to make more babies, etc. But it is certainly a violation against communities of color and women, and even white women. We know the statistics show us that the people who have most benefited from DEI policies are white women, actually, not even women of color. And yet, once again, it is women of color being hardest hit by federal funding cutbacks. I have a family member who is a dean and administrator at a nursing school that works really hard to provide opportunities for people of color and others who may not have had an opportunity to get all the necessary prerequisites. And they work hard with these folks to get them through nursing school, graduate them with stellar board scores. And so this kind of attack is certainly one on women, but certainly what they say, if America sneezes, Black folks catch a cold. So if this is happening in one part of our society, it is people of color who are going to feel an inordinate amount of pain because of it. And it's, I was a hospital administrator at the University of Chicago for several years. I'm someone who engages the healthcare system on a regular basis because I'm diabetic, I'm asthmatic, and depending upon where you go, not even the RNs, right, or the licensed nurses, but many of the technicians and nurses aides are also people of color, Black folks. So the whole economy of healthcare is based on having a certain number of lower paid people at the bottom. And yet here we are having conversations about healthcare premiums doubling and even tripling, being more than 100% more than they were last year. So where's this high cost of healthcare coming when we know that even nurses and other people and other women and people of color who are filling these very necessary roles, it's certainly not their labor costs that are causing this whole inequity in terms of the cost of color. So all the way around, it's an inordinate amount of pain, once again, to communities of color and to women in particular.
Madam President, I'm thinking that when we come forward, I want to pivot to away from, for a moment, the professionals in healthcare, the nurses, the doctors, the trained. There's clearly a problem over there with the Department of Education's attitude and behavior towards them. But there is a caring economy over here that burdens every family in America who has an aging parent or a child with a disability or a child with an illness, in terms of parents having to care for them outside of the traditional economy. The burden associated with it, I call it the caring economy, where church members have to take care of the elderly and they're not compensated for it. And they're providing them with every conceivable medical type service. And its weight on the economy is in the hundreds of billions of dollars because there are simply not professionals available when your mother or father or your loved one finds themselves needing the kind of care that is not hospitalized. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Our very special guest is none other than the General Minister of the United Disciples of Christ Church, Reverend Terry Hort Owens. More when we come forward on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
This holiday season, KBLA Talk 1580 wishes you and yours joy, peace, and prosperity. As we celebrate with family and friends, we're already looking forward to an exciting first quarter, packed with must-attend events to kick off the new year just right. In January, join us for our inaugural Brotherhood Brunch, bringing together community leaders, change makers, and everyday people for inspiration and connection. February means it's time for our signature Black History Month luncheon, a powerful celebration you won't want to miss. And in March, Women's History Month, we're once again hosting our State of Black Women in Los Angeles Symposium and Luncheon, addressing the issues that matter most inside our community. From all of us at KBLA Talk 1580, happy holidays. Stay tuned for more details on these incredible upcoming events. KBLA Talk 1580, your voice, your community, your power.
Roger and Tracy saved over $18,400. Cynthia was recovering from a family tragedy and saved over $10,300. If you are drowning in debt, then call Debt Blue. Debt Blue is a professional debt negotiation firm with over 20 years of experience helping people pay back a fraction of what they owe. Learn how to cut your debt up to half or maybe more. Be debt-free in 24 to 48 months, even with bad credit. With an A+ rating from the BBB, you can rest easy knowing Debt Blue is going to deliver guaranteed debt reduction. Debt Blue offers a success guarantee. You pay nothing unless your debt is reduced or completely resolved. That's right. You save money or it's free. Call now for significant debt relief and a free consultation. 800-200-8879. That's 800-200-8879. You don't have to declare bankruptcy. This program works if you owe $10,000, $20,000, or even $100,000 in debt. Call for your free consultation today. 800-200-8879. That's 800-200-8879.
The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in more places that could expose you more to identity theft. But LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, our US-based restoration specialists will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Don't face drained accounts, fraudulent loans, or financial losses alone. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year with promo code NEWS. Visit lifelock.com. Terms apply.
Your ambition just met its match with Robinhood. Trade stocks and ETFs, options, futures, and crypto all on one platform. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. All investments involve risk, including loss of principal. Options, futures, and crypto trading carry significant risk and may not suit all investors. Securities offered through Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Futures trading is offered by Robinhood Derivatives LLC, not FDIC or SIPC protected. Crypto offered through Robinhood Crypto LLC, NMLS ID 1702840, not FDIC or SIPC protected. Portfolio management offered by Robinhood Strategies, an SEC registered advisor.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Once again, I want to thank all of the listeners and the support that we've received from KBLA Talk 1580 for my family during this Thanksgiving season. We're extremely grateful. But we also have support for all families during the Thanksgiving season who find themselves with a loved one who's struggling. And if you're honest, when we sit around our Thanksgiving table and just before we bless our food, we think about the people who are there this year and people who are not there this year.
Right.
We reflect upon people that we've lost.
Mm.
We reflect upon the ill, the sick, and the shut in. We reflect upon them in our prayer. And in many of these cases, these are people whom need coverage in terms of their disabilities, their inabilities at this stages of their lives. They are either covered by the Affordable Care Act or they are not. And family members have to make a sacrifice, including career-changing decisions in order to provide for a loved one. And there are no tax credits, there are no subsidies to help these families under these circumstances. But believe me when I tell you, they are receiving full-time care. So there's an entirely different health care industry in the United States, unrelated to the professional care that we're talking about in the United States. It's not covered. It's not reimbursed. It doesn't get a tax break. It doesn't get a tax deduction. We are moving further and further away from a caring economy. Our very special guest on Moving Mountain Mondays is our regular contributor, Reverend Teresa Horde Owens, the General Minister and President of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada. Reverend Terry Horde Owens is a native of Terre Haute, Indiana, and a descendant of one of Indiana's oldest African-American free settlements. She earned her bachelor's degree in government with a minor in Afro-American studies from Harvard University. She earned her Master of Divinity degree at the University of Chicago Divinity School, where she was a Disciples Divinity House Scholar and recipient of the John Gray Rind Award given to the top MDiv graduate at the Divinity School. Madam President, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thanks for having me. It's always good to be here.
Madam President, can you share with us your thoughts about the caring economy that is outside of the professional economy that is costing the nation hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars in productivity every year?
Yeah. First, I think there's a structural issue to be acknowledged, that the reason that so many people are outside the professional economy is because we still don't see healthcare as a right. We see it as a privilege if you can afford it. And, they call it, some of us, the sandwich generation, where you have perhaps children that you're still either caring for, maybe who are in college, and you have older parents who, throughout the aging process, perhaps can't afford assisted living or cannot afford even in-home daycare help, someone coming into the home. We know people running back and forth to and from work. When you have to make those kinds of family sacrifices as an individual, and for your family. It may impact the kind of job that you're able to hold. A lot of employers don't understand it and aren't willing to give that kind of flexibility. Many of them are still not giving flexibility for working mothers, let alone people who have to care for ailing elders in their family. So we have a structural problem that makes this necessary, first of all, and we need to be asking ourselves, why is it that being able to afford health care is the requisite question, and not do you need it? Even when we have some family members going on Medicaid, right? You almost have to divest yourself of every marginal resource that you have, right? Instead of just being able to pay what you can pay and perhaps to contribute. This idea of having to have enough to afford it in order to have health is inhumane, and there's something really evil about it. And I know lots of families who really need for that loved one to be perhaps in assisted living, and if they can't afford it, perhaps the only way they can afford it is to create a situation where that person has no resources and isn't allowed to acquire any resources, or they will certainly not be eligible for that. So even to afford a certain level of government assistance, you almost have to be at the bottom of the totem pole. And many people find themselves with no choice but to be intentionally at the bottom in order to be able to provide just a modicum amount of care. So I know lots of folks who are busy. My mother was very ill for the last 20 years of her life, and my calendar was built around her medical appointments, even in the role that I've had now for the last 8 years. When she passed in 2021, I looked at my calendar and I was organizing trips and meetings and things around my need to be close and to be near her, to get her to doctor's appointments, to ensure that she was taken care of. I had a sibling in the area, so that was helpful. But there's so many people that are having to do that because at a certain point, whatever resource that you have is often not enough to provide this kind of care.
You know, I got up this morning, and 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock this morning, I drove to downtown Chicago, spent the morning with my father. Had to get back, prepare for the show. Probably go back after the show. My sister Santina, my mother were already there. My sister Jackie spends the evenings there. I try to double with her sometimes. Sometimes she leaves to get herself together, and then I stay. I mean, the trade-off between family members constantly shuffling, not only to provide care, but to watch the professional care that he is getting to make sure that he's being treated.
That's right.
And handled with dignity at the standards we expect him to be treated, not just because of who he is, but because, this is my dad, right? This is everyone's father. Everyone who has a mother or father in this condition wants the highest standard of care. So they find themselves not just turning people over to the professionals, but they want to be there to make sure the professionals are doing what they should professionally do and that their loved ones are being treated with care. So I'm wondering here in this moment, when I think back to the writing of the Constitution itself, the founding fathers were not thinking about artificial intelligence. They weren't thinking about computers. They couldn't even imagine that such devices would ever be created, or Bitcoin or the crypto economy. They only understood, gold, silver, and, eventually some bucks, the Lincoln penny. They understood trading. They understood bartering before there was currency. And we're living under a constitution in large measure in that kind of context. And of course, we know how it treated African Americans. We know how it felt about women, except that white men found themselves in a position in the Constitution to determine what their rights were. And it just seems to me that in light of AI and where the economy is going, with fewer and fewer people with more and more people being replaced by jobs and by technology, and fewer people being able to get a job because of technology, it just seems to me that we need to remind the American people, with the fundamental right to a health care of equal high quality added to the Constitution of the United States, that this Constitution was written for people, for human beings, not for corporations, not for artificial intelligence. And whatever it is that future Congresses have to do, including the Senate and ultimately the court, They have to have in mind that human beings, citizens, have a right to health care of equal high quality, not low quality. And of course, you might argue, or others might argue, what about people who are not citizens? Well, by virtue of the Any Persons Clause, we're not going to let a person who's not a citizen sit out here on the streets and be sick. They'll take advantage of the same amendment by way of the 14th Amendment. They may not have the citizenship right, which should be our right, but they can access the right by way of the 14th Amendment. Does that make sense to you, Reverend?
It makes total sense, because here we're talking about, what theologians we would call the imago Dei, that which is made in the image of God. Or my good friend, Hebrew Bible scholar Rick Lowry, always preaches for Jennison and says, we're not made in God's image, we're made as God's image. We are literally not a copy, but we're the thing in the earth that represents and is closest to who God is. And by that measure alone, each of us is worth dignity and health and prosperity. I mean, if you unpack that word prosperity, it shouldn't mean just the number of dollars that you have in the bank, but Roosevelt talked about the 4 freedoms from war and fear and hunger, and all those things. There are just certain things that in order to flourish as a human being, we shouldn't have to worry about. And healthcare should not be one of those things. People making decisions about food versus medicines, it's just ridiculous. Even Medicare premiums are scheduled to go up. My husband and I are just about to be ready to to be eligible for those things. And when you talk about people who are maybe, I heard an example in the news that somebody, maybe retired couple that maybe makes $80,000 a year, facing healthcare premiums of $30,000, that isn't even, it's not even rational. And given the fact that we have so many people who are billionaires who are paying less taxes than some people who are at the lower rungs of the economic ladder, it's sickening. It's evil, and it's inhumane. The idea that we have to afford health care, there's something very, very wrong. And I'm all with your Any Persons Clause, and I'm all with being clear about what's in the Constitution. Right after they passed the Constitution in 1787, it became very clear there were some things they had not codified, and that's where we got the Bill of Rights. So it's becoming clearer and clearer with each generation. There are some things that if we really say, if we are truly who we say we are, if we want to be who we say we are, we have to codify some other things. And I think healthcare is one of those.
Madam President, if we can pivot from this injustice in healthcare to an injustice that took place in our nation's court system this week, we'll have more to talk about when we come forward. Our producer is going to play the tape.
With more on that breaking news just in our newsroom, a judge dismissing the charges against both former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. The judge finding the prosecutor in those cases, Lindsay Halligan, was illegally appointed, meaning any actions she's taken as acting U.S. attorney were unlawful. Courts and legal reporter with The Hill, Zach Schoenfeld, is with me now to help me break all of this down. Zach, all of this really hot off the presses. Let's start at the beginning with this breaking news on the judge throwing out the charges against former FBI Director James Comey and Letitia James, saying that Halligan is accused of lying to Congress, saying that, Comey lied to Congress when he testified that he never authorized FBI officials to leak information to the press. What are you learning, and what has the White House said in response to this?
Hey, good afternoon, Nick. This ruling just coming down from this judge here in just the last few minutes, dismissing both these high-profile prosecutions against both James Comey and Letitia James. Both of these rulings, they're very similar. It's for the same reason, saying that a U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia who has brought both of these indictments, Lindsay Halligan, was unlawfully appointed. So this ruling at its core really has nothing to do with the actual merits of these criminal allegations against Comey and James, whether it be the lying to Congress allegations against James Comey or the mortgage fraud accusations against Letitia James. They deny that, of course, but instead this ruling is really saying that this U.S. attorney was never lawfully appointed in the first place, and so all of these actions, specifically when she went before those grand juries to seek those indictments, that all of that is invalid and that these charges all have to be dismissed.
Zach, I'm glad that you said that this has nothing to do with whether or not the merits of the case were valid or invalid. The judge is saying, before we even go any further than that, if I'm understanding you correctly, the person who brought these charges never should have been in that role.
That's right. And in fact, another thing that has been making a lot of news in recent days, specifically about James Comey's case, was a lot about what happened in those grand jury proceedings. There have been questions about, the transcripts of those proceedings, whether the grand jury actually saw the final indictment that was eventually handed up to the judge. The government at one point had conceded that it was not shown. Then they submitted a filing reversing, saying that it was. But this ruling is instead totally on a different thread. In fact, it's actually even by a different judge, because this issue had to dealt with Lindsay Halligan's appointment. It gets into a bit of a unique circumstance where they actually have to pull in a judge from a different court to adjudicate this. So this is Judge Cameron Curry, a judge who normally would serve in South Carolina.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. This is Moving Mountain Mondays. We're going to pick up on this question of injustice in our federal court system. Miss Halligan never should have been appointed to the U.S. Attorney's Office in the first place. And it gives you some sense of just how skewed and unjust our system has become in the Trump administration. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. This is Moving Mountain Mondays. Our very special guest is the General Minister and President of the United Disciples of Christ Church, both in Canada and the United States. More when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Things are about to get interesting in Cleveland. Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford is emerging as MVP favorite. Stafford had 3 touchdown passes Sunday against Tampa Bay, bringing his total to 30, tops in the NFL. The 37-year-old Stafford has thrown 27 consecutive touchdown passes without an interception. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the voice of reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the voice of reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Head to the Skirball Cultural Center for a thought-provoking contemporary art exhibition, Draw Them In, Paint Them Out. Trenton Doyle Hancock confronts Philip Guston. Explore resonant connections between the work of American Jewish painter Philip Guston and the work of Trenton Doyle Hancock, a leading Black American contemporary artist, in dialogue for the first time. While engaging with the artwork, consider the role that artists play in the pursuit of social justice. Plan your visit at skirball.org. Protect yourself from Medicare card scams. Scammers may call, email, or even knock on your door claiming they need your Medicare info, asking for money or threatening to cancel your benefits. Don't fall for it. It's a scam. Remember, Medicare doesn't need to verify your information. They already have it. Medicare won't charge you for a new card and will never threaten to cancel benefits. Check your Medicare statements for suspicious charges and report scams to the California Senior Medicare Patrol at 1-855-613-7080. We're here to help.
As a mom, comforting my family is what I do best. Vicks Vapor Stick provides soothing, non-medicated Vicks Vapors in an easy-to-apply stick, and it dries fast, so there's no mess. I use it to comfort myself and my family.
Thanks, Mom.
Vicks Vapo Stick, soothing comfort for the whole family. And try Vicks Vapo Shower Max for steamy Vicks Vapors when you need more comfort for yourself. Use as directed.
An official message from Medicare. Couple more minutes, and we'll start this month's book club.
You know, I usually love a plot twist, but this year, I'm comparing my options during Medicare open enrollment.
You can't assume your current health or drug plan is the best one for you.
And you got to make sure your drugs are covered. That's important.
So is saving money. Review all your options at Medicare.gov. Open enrollment ends December 7th. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. In this hour, our very special guest is none other than our regular contributor, Reverend Terry Hord Owens. Reverend Terry Hord Owens is the General Minister and President of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ, in the United States and Canada. She is an author. She is a dedicated member of the National Council of Churches as the treasurer of the governing board. She's been educated at Harvard University as well as the University of Chicago. So grateful that she is a regular contributor on our show. And for Thanksgiving week, how can we kick it off any better than on a spiritual foundation that is set by Reverend Owens every week? Reverend Owens, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you, as always, for having me.
Madam President, the question of justice. I don't have any more faith in the Department of Justice when I look at what the federal judge said today in the James Comey and Letitia James case. Why should anyone believe that any of their cases have been handled in light of what we are witnessing?
Oh, absolutely.
Miscarriage of justice that's taking place in our country at this hour.
It's hard to have faith, right, in these humanly derived systems, and when you just think about this, many of us felt that this was true to begin with, and it's clear that the rules that govern the naming of these interim U.S. attorneys have been violated from the very beginning. So for the judge, it's almost so simple that it's sort of like, what took you all so long to get to just the bare nuggets, right, of the case, why this was not only wrong for Lindsay Halligan to have even been appointed, let alone the fact that you brought a case, violated every. I don't think I've ever seen TV legal pundits and people who are on YouTube who are former U.S. attorneys and former prosecutors so flabbergasted at the sheer incompetence that's been exhibited in this case. And it's just a shame that it has taken our courts this long to name what's obviously been clear to most of us with or without law degrees for a long time.
You know, Madam President, in order for a grand jury indictment to be brought down, it requires the signature of the foreman. It requires multiple signatures across multiple processes. So at the grand jury level, there are real problems from my perspective, even for the interim U.S. attorney. And then when you step in that courtroom as an officer of the court, you swear to uphold the Constitution, you swear to tell the truth, you go through all of that stuff when you file your documents, certified, notarized by the U.S. government, and you file an indictment that the grand jury has not even seen. That's perpetrating a fraud upon the court. Ms. Halligan could and should be investigated not only by Congress, but she could be indicted for her behavior in the courtroom of this nation, and ought be, quite frankly, because if she can get away with that, any U.S. attorney anywhere in the United States can get away with it.
Totally agree. I mean, this is a clear sign, you know, the adage that a lot of people are throwing around, everything that touches dies. So when he chooses you to be a tool of his own injustice, what has been shown is that it's usually the people who are being used to perpetrate this injustice who wind up paying the heaviest price. And I think she should be investigated. There doesn't need to be, I think, a criminal investigation. She's clearly, from what I understand, even violated just basic legal ethics of process and procedure. She misquoted rules about the Fourth and Fifth Amendments. She just fell down on her face on every reliable understanding that we have of the practice of law. And it boggles the mind why somebody didn't stop this any sooner, or why somebody, I don't know what needs to happen in terms of the process of the courts for them to be able to make a ruling. And now I hear that they're going to try to appeal this to the highest court. I don't know if the Supreme Court is just waiting for things to reach it before they can dismantle everything that they've put into place. I mean, they themselves said that the president could not be charged for things that were quote unquote official acts. And that's in large part, which I think has precipitated the degree of comfort that Trump seems to have by dispatching people left and right to do his bidding, whether it's illegal or not. It's just, it has to anger you when there are so many of us, our community, as Black people in particular, who have really built our case for justice on these freedoms that we have always believed in were being espoused both in the Declaration as well as the Constitution. And to see them and those rules and just even the right to due process being so disrespected is concerning, particularly for those of us who have a hard enough fight as it is to get the light of those laws shown on our own situations.
You know, it's almost hard. It's also hard to imagine that when you look at the lack of qualifications of Ms. Halligan as a U.S. attorney, that on the one hand, his attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which, by the way, filters out some of the most qualified and sophisticated people for an opportunity in the first place to do anything at Harvard, Yale, in the public sector, in the private sector. To be Black, to be female means you're the best of the best who's ever applied for the job to even be considered. But Ms. Halligan gets an appointment to the U.S. Attorney's Office showing absolute incompetence costing people their livelihoods, threatening the liberty of people. 2 lawyers, James Comey, is a lawyer. Letitia James, an attorney general, a lawyer. 2 very accomplished people in their spheres of service, under attack by sheer incompetence.
The other telling aspect of this is that she argued that case in front of the grand jury because there were no willing attorneys in the U.S. Attorney's Office who were willing to perpetrate the fraud themselves. No one was willing to take that on. So you have to at least allow that there were some people with integrity, some people who had a high enough personal and legal ethical standard that they refused to participate. The previous U.S. attorney who was dismissed by Trump because he simply said, I don't see enough here to prosecute and win a case. That level of integrity is being dismissed. I'm thinking of our former president, Barack Obama. He was on an interview and he actually said, he tries not to say too much until it gets to be too much. And he said, now, if I had done any of these things, if I had tried to perpetrate this kind of fraud, if Lindsay Halligan, I dare say, had been a Black woman, first of all, she probably wouldn't have been chosen if she were a Black woman. But these kinds of things are allowed for lesser educated, lesser capable, less qualified white folks who are simply willing to do the bidding of this president. And the real challenge for us as a country will be, when will we say that enough is enough? Well, there need to be some legal flipping of tables, I think, happening somewhere.
Madam President, that's a wonderful analogy. In this moment, I'm thinking not only about the biases that have been shown by the Department of Justice in this case, I'm thinking about other attorneys, both U.S. attorneys and prosecutors for state offenses in every state in the union, who've brought their biases to why they charged this African-American youth, or why they charged this young woman, or why they charged. The point is, bias has to be removed from this process. And Lindsay Halligan has shown us absolute bias in this case. But just imagine the jail cells and the corridors of courtrooms around the country are filled with young Black men on this day because of bias. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. It's still Moving Mountain Mondays with Reverend Terry Hord Owens. More when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Is reviewing life insurance on your to-do list? Now's the perfect time to add it. A friend recently told me that securing life insurance sooner rather than later can help you lock in lower rates for years to come. So I bumped this up on my list and got it done. I called SelectQuote and couldn't believe how easy and affordable life insurance is. I'm 40 and got a $500,000 policy for $16 a month. My husband's also 40 and his $500,000 policy was only $18 a month. Plus, with SelectQuote's same-day coverage, there was no medical exam required, and we were covered by the time we hung up. Knowing I have this checked off my list feels amazing, but the peace of mind knowing my family is protected feels even better.
Call SelectQuote at 1-800-729-7070. That's 1-800-729-7070. Or go to SelectQuote.com to get your free quote today. That's 1-800-729-7070. Details on example rate at SelectQuote.com.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a Black and brown-led community community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. They provide spaces for healing through community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at walkgoodla. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Attention. Have you racked up $10,000 or more in credit card debt? Are you barely getting by making minimum payments? With credit card debt reaching all-time highs, National Debt Relief is notifying consumers about significant debt relief options currently being made available to help those with overwhelming credit card debt. These options may reduce a large portion of credit card debt for those who qualify. You don't need to declare bankruptcy or take out a consolidation loan, and you may only have to pay back a fraction of what you owe, even if you have bad credit. National Debt Relief has already reduced the credit card debt for more than 550,000 consumers, so don't wait. If you owe $10, $20, or even $100,000 in credit card debt, you can now take advantage of this financial debt relief as the cost of living continues to skyrocket. To check what debt reduction you may qualify for, call 800-237-8585. That's 800-237-8585. Again, that's 800-237-8585.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Jackson Jr., welcome forward to the Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. This is Moving Mountain Mondays with Reverend Dr. Teresa Hord Owens, the President and General Minister of the Disciples of Christ Church in the United States and in Canada. Madam President, what are you hearing from members of your church abroad, beyond the United States congregations? How is your church looking at us from the outside in?
You know, our church is in Canada, and most of our churches are in the U.S., but we do have a group of churches who are in Canada, are quite afraid of what they're seeing. We have board members who had to make a particular calculus even about even entering the United States. I know of lots of folks in Canada who've chosen not to vacation or visit here, even to cross the border to shop because they're afraid. Canada, as you know, has national health care, a unified social health care system. So they don't understand the issues that we're facing with regard to health care. They don't understand the actions that have been taken with tariffs. But in particular, they do not understand these issues of health care, and they do not understand the flagrant disrespect of the rule of law. My contacts within the World Council of Churches when I was in South Africa in June, I really, from the floor of that central committee body, on multiple occasions, have called upon my colleagues around the world, just as the United States and Christians in the United States are always standing up for injustice and uh, breaching of human rights in other parts of the country. We need people around the world standing up to critique the United States and not be afraid to do so and to do what's right. But people are appalled, they're shocked, they're angry. I know folks even from Sweden. My husband does a lot of gospel music work. Don't want to come here because of what's happened, and people's very view of the United States has certainly soured. We as a church passed a resolution at our General Assembly affirming the sovereignty of the nation of Canada. We felt that we needed to do that because the current president had made overtures as though he were going to make Canada the 51st state in the Union. And we felt it was necessary in order to maintain that goodwill to let them know that our church, at least, did not agree with the actions of the administration and wanted to affirm their sovereignty. So people are appalled, they're amazed, they're shocked. It's going to take a while, I think, for the United States to recover from this huge black eye that the Trump administration has been. It's going to take us a while to kind of put Humpty Dumpty back together again, if indeed we can.
Madam President, I talked with Antonio about that in the last hour. I don't hear from all of the bright, shiny faces in the Democratic Party any movement for a hard left just to pull the party back to the middle. I think the damage that Donald Trump has done is decades worth of work without a hard left just to restore order, almost running a campaign just to restore us to the middle. Given how far to the right he's pushed the nation. And Antonio said that if you're not careful, the Democratic Party's left will become the new middle because the right is actually shifting the entire scale to the left. I couldn't agree with you more.
Oh, absolutely. And I think now that we're seeing all of the realities, right, of what the failure of the Democrats to stand and hold the line during the shutdown to ensure that those ACA subsidies would in fact be reinstituted. We're seeing people all over the country literally freaking out over what their healthcare premiums might look like. I don't know that I know that we've seen faith communities all over the country coming forward to feed people. One of my friends is an AME Zion bishop, said when we were in a congressional hearing about a month ago that in talking with a lot of his members and clergy, that people feel that we can help each other get food. We could have weathered the storm with delayed SNAP benefits. We could have figured out a way, even though it's hard, as I'm always telling people, the faith community doesn't have the resource to replace everything the federal government has taken away. That's not the job of the faith community to do all of that. There just aren't enough resource. But we simply must be clear that healthcare is a much bigger issue than feeding people. We can figure that out. Every church I know, a circle of churches I know is figuring that out and doing the best they can do. We won't be able to do anything to address the healthcare premiums unless that's handled by legislation and by Congress. And I just think it's a dark day that's coming unless we hold the line, as you said, and make that hard left and simply stand for the rule of law and for due process. And I'm not sure what it will take to get the Supreme Court straightened out, but people are going to have to be willing to stand and take some personal risks themselves and simply do what is right. This country was created through real revolution, and people were not afraid to stand and act and fight. And I think we're at that point again. We can't be afraid to do what's right here.
Madam President, two quick things. One, can you share with us where we can get your book, Staying at the Table?
Staying at the Table is currently available at chalicepress.com. That's my denomination's publishing house. As of January 6th, it'll be available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and even Cokesbury. But for right now, it's only available at chalicepress.com. And there'll be a big push when it's out on Amazon in January. January 6th, ironically. So perhaps that's a blow for justice for it to come out on January 6th on Amazon.
We're trying to stay at the table. We're not trying to break in the Capitol, right?
That's right. That's right. We're trying to offer some sense of a moral and ethical framework within which to build a society and to honor one another, even when it's difficult to do so.
Madam President, we have about 55 seconds. A word of hope.
You know, I heard the end of your conversation with Anthony, and I think I have to join with him and say we just have to, fight the good fight. Paul once said, "I've fought the fight, I've finished the course," and I think we have to just understand that this will not be easy. We've got to fight the good fight, and truth crushed to earth will rise. And I think when we're about valuing human beings, we're about valuing the sanctity of human life and flourishing, that God and all things that are good, whatever you believe is good, will be on our side. So let's not give up this fight for a decent and humane society. It will take all of us to do it.
Happy early Thanksgiving to you and to all of our listeners. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You've been listening to Moving Mountain Mondays with the General Minister and President of the Disciples of Christ Church, Reverend Terry Hoard Owens. More on KBLA Talk 1580. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. It's coming. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. More on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.